Network, joined by my good buddy, Scotty Thurman. The man. Scotty, how you been, buddy?
I'm good, man. Excited to join you on this show this morning. I know it's kind of early for you. I'm an early riser, so I'm excited to see your face this morning.
I know, you've always been early. Where's that come from? Even when we were playing, got to know each other well, playing with the Rim Rockers after college. First guy up.
Man, I blame it on Coach Richardson, man. All those 6 a.m. practices, it just kind of became somewhat of a tradition for me. I don't drink coffee, but I'm still up early in the morning, just try to get organized for the day and get ready to go.
You're coaching in Little Rock now, Parkview Patriots. How's that going?
It's going pretty well. Got a good group of young guys. They're working hard for me right now. We've actually got a big game tonight at BB, conference game. They got a pretty good team, so we're just trying to gear up and get ready for that one.
What did you do early on? So you're coaching now with high school kids, and
Right.
Early on in Ruston, Louisiana. What was it about your attitude that helped you not only have a great college career, but a high school career, but it set you up for the opportunity for a scholarship? What was it early on that you were doing differently, other than getting up early? What were you doing differently that some other guys weren't?
Well, I think spent a lot of time with older kids. It's a lot different now. But I tagged along with my older brother. That's kind of how I got involved in sports, was going around him and being around his friends and getting beat up a little bit, getting taught at the same time. But then I really learned about the academic part from my mom. She wanted to make sure that I did good in school. So it was always a combination focus for me. It was never just one thing. It was always me being able to do both. And she would obviously take sports away if I didn't perform well in the classroom. So I always kind of had that fire lit under me to make sure that I was doing the right things both on and off the court.
And then what was it when Coach called you? He come down to Ruston? Where did you guys take him to? Did you take them eat? Did he come to the house?
Well, he came to the house. It actually started, back when I was playing AAU basketball. The national tournament used to be held in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So that was my first time getting a chance to be seen by Coach, but my first time really putting the name with the face. At that time, he had Scott Edgar on the staff, who moved on to Murray State that following year. And then Coach Anderson kind of picked it up as I was a rising junior, and we just kind of maintained the relationship. And, the chips just kind of fell where they were.
Did you play in the King Cotton Classic in Pine Bluff in high school?
Never had the opportunity to play in that. I did watch it, often. I didn't get an opportunity to play in it, though, but I did see some of the great teams that did participate.
I know Kareem played in it. We never played in it when I was in high school, although I heard of it. Right. When Kareem Reed was playing in that, right? His team came up from the Bronx,
right?
And Coach was recruiting him at that point,
right?
And you guys went and watched him,
right?
Didn't you? How many of the guys from the team? So the guys from the Razorbacks team went down there, and did you know him at the time, Kareem, or that was your first introduction?
Well, I met Kareem the summer before his senior year at the Adidas ABCD camp that was held in Gibson Landing, Michigan. That's back when Sonny Vaccaro was still running the camps. So I got the opportunity to meet Kareem.
Were you working it?
Yeah, I worked the camp. I was a camp counselor, and got a chance to know Kareem, because back then that was when, they expected the college guys to go around and kind of be mentors and make sure that, they were in their rooms for curfew, and that they were making sure that they made the meetings.
You had to get Kareem back in his room for curfew?
I had to get Kareem back in his room. But got a chance to know Kareem then. I actually, called Coach Anderson about Kareem at that time, saying, hey, there's a guard up here we need to take a look at. And he started to establish a relationship with his high school coach. And then when Kareem was considering us, Corliss, myself, and Lee Wilson went down and supported him at the King Cotton Classic in Pine Bluff, and the relationship just kind of developed from there.
I'm curious about your freshman year, because you had one of the great freshman seasons, in Razorback history. I can't think of many that had a great freshman season. You came out of the box, I think, right, averaging 16, 17, just put everybody on notice right away. And we see, obviously, that it's so difficult to transition from high school to college. It's crazy. Offensively, defense. You can shoot the ball, but just everything that goes on. Right. What helped you make it look so easy? What was the challenges? Because when I got there, forget it. I'm telling you, it wasn't I probably was in Fayetteville for 28 hours, and I looked at my parents. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go. I'm out of here. I am gone. So for many, it's a struggle. For you, it didn't look like a struggle.
Right.
How did you prepare for that?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. I graduated high school May 18th, May 29th. My dad told me it was time for me to, get out of the house and go ahead and start moving on. So I went to
And you were
Fayetteville.
young, weren't you? You graduated high school 17.
I graduated 17. So I moved up to Fayetteville and got a summer job because at the time school had already started. So I couldn't get in school at the time.
Oh,
So
wow.
I moved up, got a summer job, had a 1-bedroom apartment. Corliss at the time was living in the dorm. He moved out of the dorm and moved into the 1-bedroom apartment with me.
Uh-oh.
And we went to work together every day. We had, we worked at the same place, but then we also worked out together every day. And then we played every night. And back then, you played during camps, you played at night because guys worked during the day and they had school. So I think that's back when, Todd and Lee and Oliver Miller and those guys would always come back and play.
Right.
And I started having success against those guys in pickup games. And I think it really just kind of sparked my confidence and gave me even more confidence to be able to be a good college player. And I think I just kind of took that summer and just took it into the year with me.
Did you start right away?
Yeah, I started right away.
Who was that starting five? That would have been 93, the 92-93 season.
Right. Yeah, it was myself. It was Robert Shepard. It was Daryl Hawkins.
The Hawk, wow.
We started the White Stewart because if you remember, Corliss was down with a bad foot. And then, then it was Corey Beck. So we were really 4 guards and 1 big.
And so I forget, that was some length down there, man. You guys on that perimeter from a defensive standpoint, even Corey's 6'4", obviously, and
right.
Shep, isn't particularly tall, but I mean, he's just quick as a cat.
Yeah, quick as a cat, man. It really changed his game. Robert Shepard was one of those guys that was kind of an unsung hero. He was a big-time scorer coming out of high school, big-time scorer when he went to West Ark and, came there with Todd and those guys and kind of had to take a back seat in that role. And then entered Corliss and myself, and he still managed to, be somewhat of a scorer for us, but he was really a dynamic defensive guy.
That was kind of like Clint, too, McDaniel.
Right.
He came, he was putting up big numbers in high school. I remember talking to Coach and Clint too, just saying how for him to get minutes, he had to turn into that defensive stopper.
Right. Yeah. And I think it was a different role obviously it was a different role for him coming from high school. Everybody had an opportunity to score, but, with the way that we played under Coach, even you and myself, we both scored the basketball, but you had to be able to do other things. Even if we weren't quote unquote lockdown defenders, we had to be good help side defenders, good communicators, and be able to, tell the guys who are pressuring the ball, what's behind them so that they don't get blindsided with a screen and things like that. So I think it forced probably myself as well as you to be more of an all-around player. And then, we get known for being able to shoot, but you have to know if you're playing for Coach Richardson, you got to be able to play some defense as well.
I think that was one of the things that helped me was, Coach, the style of defense, it was built, defense was built into it. Right. So if you were somebody who could read and react, you could read where a trap should be and react off of that. And from an offensive standpoint, I look at teams now, and we talked a little bit about it yesterday, that this spread that you see a lot of teams 5 out.
Right.
We were running that.
Right.
The cutting game, the screening game. Even if you go back and I realize Corliss would get it on the block at times.
Right.
But do you see the similarities in sort of like what people are talking about, the new wave basketball, 5 out, positionless, all that? Have you thought about that in your team, like your 93 team and 94 team and 95 team, how you played?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And more so even that team you just mentioned, my freshman year, we had to play that way because we didn't really have a quote-unquote low post scoring threat. Dwight Stewart was a post-up guy, but he really was a guy that stepped out and faced up.
Yeah.
We didn't have Corliss for the first 13 or 14 games, so we didn't really have that one guy we could just throw it into the post to. So for us, 5 out was the way we survived, and it was kind of the way we thrived in it. And even now, like you mentioned, everybody's talking about positionless basketball, but I agree with you. It's kind of the way we've always played. So I think when we watch it, we look at it as, hey, we used to do that. But when other people watch it, it's kind of like a new phenomenon of sorts.
Is that what you coach now?
We play a lot of 5-out. You know, we've got a bunch of small guards, and we've got a couple kids that have good size. I got one kid 6'6". I got a freshman who's 6'7", and I've got a couple of 6'3" guys. But for the most part, we're a 5-out team. We do try to come down and execute sets, but the moment it breaks down, we just flow right into our 5-out, and normally we're pretty effective.
Right. Yeah, and get out of that. What from a mentality standpoint, that championship team, and it's funny. I always talk about how you guys leave, right? 95.
Right.
And it's almost an entirely new team. There was Kareem obviously had redshirted that year, so he had been there but didn't play. And then it was Big Tank Robinson, Darnell, Lee Wilson, Romeo, and John Ankskov and Reggie Merritt running the screening game and cutting game in practice. So I felt like we 9 new guys that recruiting year. Can you believe that? 95, 96, it was 9 new guys, freshman, junior college.
Yeah.
So we had never experienced the mentality that you guys had. We'd always just heard about it.
Right.
And one of the great things, everyone had talked about how coach treated you guys like men. It was like, so I get a chuckle when I hear about some of the stories just going on the road.
Right.
Like Coach seemed to me, Coach Richardson, like he just let you guys alone. Yeah. Like he wasn't messing with you guys in the hotel because he took that approach with us early on. Then he realized we weren't as mature as you guys. But do you get that sense that your championship team was made up of some mature guys that took care of their business?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we had guys who had been there. My freshman year, we went to the Sweet 16. So basically, we returned that same team, minus, we picked up Darnell Robinson and Lee Wilson. So I think we had a bunch of guys that were serious about what it is that we wanted to accomplish or what it was that we wanted to accomplish. And we didn't really want to let anything get in the middle of that. So he did kind of allow us to kind of grow into our own selves and kind of police ourselves, so to speak. But he also would intervene whenever needed be. If someone felt like they were maybe getting a little bit of the big head or, stepping outside of the group. The biggest thing about that group was that there were no cliques. It was
right.
1 through 12, 1 through 13, however many guys we had, not just on scholarship, but even the walk-ons. We were all pretty close-knit. And that's one of the beauty things about college basketball, because even now, we're all still very close-knit. And I think that's something that goes untalked about when you think about college athletics. Everybody thinks about the wins and the losses, but they forget about the relationships that are formed.
Yeah, I even look at that team, and it was a team like made up of leaders. Like you said, there was no. It was like everybody. You could talk to each other,
right,
and correct it,
right.
And I think that's sometimes people miss that. Aside from like the talent on the court, is how you build something to where you can address things in the locker room and get them right.
Right.
When you see it. But was there a loud voice in that? A louder voice other than coaches than others?
Yeah, for sure. Corey Beck, myself. Corliss was more of a quiet leader, but he led by his actions and his work ethic. We had some older guys that had been there before. Elmer Martin, who was kind of an elder statesman.
Yeah.
Clint McDaniel, who had been there, and those guys had seen what it looked like, with Todd, Lee, and Big O in that group. So they knew what maximum success looked like. And I think they did a good job of kind of cultivating the relationships with myself and Corliss, who were kind of the youngsters, and just kind of taking us under their wings and showing us, hey, this is how we do things here.
What do you remember from that run? There were a couple close calls from what I remember.
The year that we won it?
Yeah.
I remember the Arizona game, when we played them in the Final Four. I remember the Florida game at home at our place. They had Dan Cross and DeClerc and those guys, and the Meat Hook. They were a great team. They always put it to the brink. I remember, Ole Miss was always a tough game for us for some reason, because they always had some Arkansas kids. We would normally win the game, but it was almost like a war. You felt really fatigued when you came out of that game. And then, the battles against Kentucky, whether we played at home on Super Bowl Sunday or at Rupp, those battles were, epic. And I think it's amazing now that, when you start thinking about the Arkansas program, where it was then versus where it is now, and, in Kentucky, even now, who's experiencing some difficulties, people always talk about Kentucky, but people forget, how great Arkansas has been.
Yeah, that's true. What was the toughest that at that time? And I know there's some new buildings out there, but what was the toughest place to play?
Toughest place to play was probably Rupp.
Yeah. I always said Rupp, yeah, because I think they hold 24,000.
Yeah.
But it's like the, champagne and shrimp cocktail crowd. You know what I'm saying, Scotty?
Yeah.
It's actually a little further away
Right.
from the court
Right.
than some of these other places right on top of you. We were playing at Auburn, and Auburn's gotten a new arena, which is loud now. It's a real, I think it's built actually sort of in the mold of like Bud Walton Arena.
Right.
But some of those places were these people were on top of you. We had a guy, this is a true story. At Auburn, we are in the layup lines before the game. I get it out of the rim, ready to throw it to the shooting line. And there's a student that had gotten in our shooting line, and he's just running like he's ready to get the ball, ready to lay it. So the proximity in some of these places is just off the charts. And it makes it fun. And like you said, I mean, even Ole Miss, place like that, just wild to play at.
Yeah, and like even Missouri, we played at Missouri, and they would often call you all night on the phone. They would meet us at the airport. You fly into a little private airport there. They would meet you at the airport and follow you to the hotel and kind of run zigzags around the bus and different things. They had the Antler crew. And then whenever we would get off the bus and go into the game, they would form a tunnel that you had to actually walk through in order to the arena. And there was this one year that they had a little dead pig on a pole, and they grazed it up against Coach Richardson's suit. And man, he lost it for a second there. But it was just kind of fun. That was one of the probably more difficult places to play too that wasn't in our league at the time.
Yeah, and you played a year at Barnhill, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that when you, and I guess it was a championship year is when the first year you played at Bud Walton.
Right.
And what was that like going from Barnhill to the Bud? It
was crazy, man. It was crazy because we didn't really think that it could get any louder, because in Barnhill it was extremely loud, and it was, the fans were in close proximity to the court, kind of like you mentioned, had that box shape, and it was very loud. And then when we moved to Bud, it really just became that times 2 or 3. You had that many more fans, but it remained loud. It was definitely a new environment. We were very excited to have the opportunity to go and play, in front of that many people, because when we came on our visits, we just thought it was always going to be Barnhill. And not that there was anything wrong with that. We thought that was the greatest place to play as well. But when they introduced us to Bud, it just kind of took on a life of its own. And then next thing you know, you start having 20,000 every night.
Who took you on your visit?
On my visit, I had Todd Day. I hung out with Lee Mayberry a little bit and Oliver Miller. I didn't get a chance to really hang out with any of the guys that I was going to be playing with the exception of Warren Lynn briefly. For the most part, it was Todd Day, who I guess Coach knew I kind of patterned my game after a little bit. So that was a big thrill for me.
Was Todd make you carry his bags around when you?
He didn't make me carry his bag. he treated me pretty good on my visit. He showed me around, kind of talked to me about the lay of the land a little bit. Explained to me how crazy the fans were, which is something that you don't really understand as a high school student. But once you get there, you really do get a chance to understand what it means to be a Razorback and how passionate our fans are.
Did you embrace that? Because it is a fishbowl, and a lot of college towns are like this, where the college athletes are especially in the SEC, and they're the stars, right, of everything. So did you embrace that, or did you not necessarily enjoy it? But I mean, there's people who understand it, can embrace it, deal with it, accept it, and thrive in that. Or were you somebody that was like, it didn't come that easy to you?
It didn't really come that easy to me, especially probably my first and second year, because growing up in a small town playing basketball, you didn't really realize it would be that much fanfare that came along with it. I think after my sophomore year, I kind of realized it was part of it, and I embraced it a little bit more. But my first 2 years, I think I was just kind of felt like I was just one of the guys, obviously. But until you see, people wearing your jerseys and people running up to you on your autograph, and can't really go a lot of places, a lot of fanfare. That's really when it started to hit me that, hey, I mean, these people view us as stars, and on some levels, it's great, because you get a chance to be recognized that way. But then at sometimes, when you're out trying to have dinner with your family, or trying to be not necessarily secretive, but just be incognito, it can be a little bit much, especially if you just want to enjoy dinner and go back home. But
Right.
at the end of the day, though, like I tell people, there's a lot worse things that you could be recognized for. So I just kind of learned at this point in my life to just take it all with a grain of salt.
Right. So you guys go back to the Final Four,
Right.
UCLA game, and that obviously, I mean, you just to get back there is incredible, phenomenal. So, and did you think immediately after that game, or when you thought about it, I'm coming back, we're gonna come back, try to go to back Final Fours?
Right.
And then I guess, yeah, you and Corliss had left early, and the other guys were seniors. But was that always in your mind, like I'm leaving, or was it a struggle?
It was a struggle. I never really actually wanted to leave, but after having conversations with Coach Richardson and some of the teams, and with the information that I received, I felt like it was the right time. Never really expected to do it, but when I was faced with it, it was kind of like, you either capitalize now or you
Right.
come back to the unknown. I obviously could have gone either way, but I did what I felt like was best for me at the time. And although for some people, everybody's got their own views of how they feel like it should have worked, but at the end of the day, as far as my life is concerned, I feel like I made the right decision still to this day.
I wouldn't have got as many minutes, Scott. I mean, not nearly as many shots. Okay? when it comes down to it. You've been around a lot of great coaches, Who coaching now? Is anybody you sort of rely on, or you take from them in particular, or what do you take from your coaches that you've had?
I take a little bit of everything from coaches that I played for, coaches that I work with. I take a lot from Coach Richardson just in terms of the toughness and the discipline, style of play a little bit. Same thing with Coach Anderson, style of play. But I also had some good coaches overseas in Europe that I've learned, a bunch of quick hitter stuff from. I learned a lot of preparation from in terms of, getting guys shots that they're going to get in the game versus just shooting.
Right.
Understanding that way when they face with it in the game, they'll be a lot more confident in taking the shot versus, working on James Harden triple step backs that they're not going to have the opportunity to shoot. But then ultimately, I've learned from my middle school and high school coaches just the amount of time that it takes to put in order to be successful at something. A lot of high school coaches look at I'm just a high school coach, and I'm a little bit different. I believe in outworking the opponent and always being ready for the moment when it presents itself. So we spend a lot of time in the gym. It's a lot different than probably what a lot of my kids were used to prior to, whether that's spring workouts, summer workouts, always leading up to the season. And we just try to do things a little bit different than what I think most high schools are doing in terms of the preparations side.
Do you do that conditioning that Coach Richardson used to do?
Yeah, we do. We do have
You ever come in first when you had to run Cleveland Ave?
Never. Never. Hey, and guess what? I'll be honest with you. My goal was never to be in front. Yeah, my goal was to finish it standing straight up and being able to breathe properly after that.
And that 3-mile run uphill, and then you think you got up the hill, and then you go, and then it goes up the hill again, and it keeps going. It kept me up before we had to run that, because the guys had scared me successfully so much that it kept me up the whole night before.
Oh, I can believe it, man. Hey, same here. I didn't mind running line drills. We didn't do a lot of track work with Coach. Everything was pretty much between the lines with the exception of, running outside on Cleveland. And that was the one day whenever he said that, that was the one day I was like, man, I hate this stuff. But I will say this, though. The one thing I did learn from it is if you could stay within the middle of the pack, then you were doing pretty good. As long as I could see Davor Remack, Bobby Shepard, or Darryl Hawkins, or Clint McDaniel, then I felt pretty good.
Isn't it unbelievable, man, how there's just, even, whether it's the weight room or running, there is just some guys who have that in their genetics.
Right.
That can just go, man.
Yeah, it's a ton of guys. I mean, I tell people about Davor Remack all the time. He was probably the most well-conditioned guy I've ever seen in my life. I mean, didn't matter if we were running suicides. It didn't matter if we were running down the backs. Didn't matter if we were running Cleveland. He was always going to be in the top 2 or 3.
Do you think so? I mean, there isn't a kid now who is playing any kind of sport that doesn't think that they need to be, in a strength and conditioning program and all fancy weights and weight belts and all these things. And I look back, we had a water ball. And for those who don't know what a water ball is, Coach Richard used to have one of the student managers squirt water into a basketball. We used a water ball, a weight ball, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Maybe some jump ropes.
Jump ropes.
And have you stuck to that old school, or have you changed with the times?
Oh no, we introduced some of that. We introduced some jump rope. You'd be amazed at how many kids can't really jump rope. So we introduced jump rope. We do some of the same. I mean, it's crazy. We do some of the same things, but this year was different, obviously, with the pandemic, because we were allowed to work out in June. So when we started in June, we just kind of eased into the condition and just kind of made it a point to where we would do it over a longer period of time. Whereas last season, we just kind of put it all together where it was like, it depended on the week, it would be 3 to 4 days. Like every other day would be a conditioning day. The other day would be strength and skill work and team stuff. So, I've taken a lot of the stuff that I learned at the college level from Coach Anderson, even with Coach Pelfrey, and just tried to integrate that into what I do. Obviously, you can't do everything, because at that level, you're recruiting athletes, whereas at this level, you're taking pretty much who walks through the door. Right. So it's a little bit of a challenge in terms of trying to implement everything that we've done. But as far as the fundamentals and the conditioning, for the mental toughness part of it, we've been able to do a good job of integrating that.
Where are you guys now in the season?
We're in the middle of our conference season. We've got 3 games left to complete the first round of teams, and then we'll start back over playing those teams again. So right now we're 10-2, 3-1 in conference, and playing pretty well right now.
Where do you? Last thing I want to ask you about is, when you go into a season, how do you set your team goals, or do you? I mean, are you someone who writes them down for the team and says, this is what we're trying to do? Is it a daily goal, weekly goal, season goals?
Well, to be honest, man, we shoot for one goal at Parkview, and that's to win the state championship.
Right.
We don't really talk about conference championships. We talk about state championships. And that's the overall goal every day is to work on that. We talk about it. It's not something that we hide from. But we talk about it each and every day. Our kids know that that's the standard that's been set. And when I came in, I knew that. So I didn't want to come in and start to set all of these minuscule things. Now, we do talk about goals to get better in terms of performance in the games, in practice. We do set those. But as far as the overall team goal is to win a state championship, and anything less here at Parkview is pretty much unacceptable.
Well, I know you be there. I know. Have you seen much college basketball? I know it's been tough to watch a lot of games. You don't know if one game is going to be postponed depending on the night. You've been able to keep up with the landscape?
Yeah, I've been watching quite a bit. Now that the NBA started, I kind of go back and forth when I'm watching tape on our opponent or on our team. I go back and forth with the games that are on TV. Been some pretty good teams. I'm really impressed with Gonzaga and what they're doing. I think Baylor's got a great team. They look like they're one of those teams that's going to be the favorite. Alabama's doing a great job in the SEC, playing pretty well. And then I've been watching a lot of the teams that nobody really talk about, like the Georgia State, the San Fran.
Oh, yeah.
The teams that are going to sneak up on some people, when the time comes for tournament time.
Yeah, that always happens. Scotty, man, I appreciate you joining me on 30 Minutes of Hell.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
It wasn't like running Cleveland.
Nothing like that.
All right, Scotty, appreciate it, man. Good luck.
All right, thanks a lot, man. Good to see you.
All right, talk to you soon.